down that little hill there. Originally, I was going to stand there to speak, but I didn't think you all wanted to see me roll backwards, so I asked Dr. Paul to please put me on flat land somewhere. Oh, it is such a good thing to be back here again. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Dr. Paul, for extending an invitation for me to come back and share. That means I didn't say anything too crazy the last time. Yes. I want to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. Yes, happy Valentine's Day. Okay, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a little commercial. First of all, I want to say a special happy Valentine's Day to my wife. I have to recognize my wife. I've always loved to do that. And my daughter. Oh, she's out with the kids. But also, I want to tell you about a fabulous new book. It's actually an Amazon bestseller, and I actually have a chapter in the book, and it's called The Strength of My Soul, Stories of Sisterhood, Triumph, and Inspiration. And it's a little book. I'm supposed to sell this book for $25. I think that's ridiculous, so I'm not going to sell it for that. So I'm selling the book for $20 if you have it, $15 if you don't. And my wife, if you're interested, my wife will get you a copy, and I just want you to know. There are stories in here of people who have survived things like incest, rape, all kinds of things, illnesses, and it's so inspiring because we all go through something, don't we? And sometimes it's nice to know that just to see the evidence of people who have endured and gone through and have actually come out better on the other side. So that's what this book is about. So if you're interested, we have those. That's it for commercials. Don't have any more commercials. I have to also say that the music department, you all are so wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your gifts and talents with all of us. All right, after that, now we can go ahead and move forward with this message for today. And I give God thanks already because we already have the presence of the Spirit of God in this room. And I'm affirming that the Spirit of God will continue to speak to me and through me, and we'll be able to receive our particular message that we're here to receive for today. You know, because we all have our own special message that we get on our own special frequency. So at this point, I invite you to zone in to whatever it is, wherever it is, however it is that you can hear a positive word, I invite you to listen for it. I want to talk just for a little while from the topic of higher love. Higher love. You know, there are two special, you know, when you get older, sometimes the progressives work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you have to pull the words closer. All right, I think I got the right thing right now, but higher love we want to talk about. You know, there are two special things about today. The first one is it's that day that some of us were expecting to receive some flowers or some candy or some kind of little trinket. Some of us wanted to get a little symbol, maybe a little round ring, a symbol of some divine union that's coming our way. On Valentine's Day, many of us come up with these images of what we think we ought to receive because of this word that we call love. I heard, this is strange, I heard on one of these morning shows last week or a couple weeks ago, I heard that this past few days and the past couple weeks is one of the times when people most frequently break up. Isn't that ridiculous when you think of a holiday that's supposed to be about love coming up, but it says that it's a time where people reassess and say, well, maybe I'm not in love. Or then they start to think, now, have you ever been in this place where you're buying a card and your heart's not really in the same place as the card? And you stand there and you say, now what am I supposed to do? And then all of a sudden you want to act like you're 10. Let me go make my own card so that I can say what I want to say. But they're saying that this is an interesting time of year because it's a time when we talk about love, but it's also a time of introspection. So that's why I want to talk about the other time of year that it is. Today is not only Valentine's Day, it's also the first day in the Christian year that they talk about the season of Lent. Are we We familiar with Lent? Today is the first, some people don't know what Fat Tuesday is. The Fat Tuesday is when you get everything out before you start Lent, because you start on Ash Wednesday. And I hope you all didn't do too much on Tuesday that you had to be covered with ashes on Wednesday. But Lent goes back to the early years of Christianity, back into the 4th century. It first was legalized in year 313, and then it was endorsed by the Council of Nicaea in 325. And in that time, between Ash Wednesday and Easter Sunday, people would fast. And the fast at that time would be a fast of food, a fast of water. And then some of us have a history, I know some of you have probably given up things for Lent, have fasted in different things, fasted on television, but some of us do things like I'm going to fast on cake, I'm going to fast on drinking so much, I'm going to fast on the things that are going to help me look better by Easter, where it's not really a sacrifice, it's a weight loss plan. But we understand that Lent is a time where it historically has been a time of sacrifice. However, I want to invite us to look at Lent, the season of Lent, a little bit differently. I thought about, what can a preacher say when you're looking, how do you converge these two things, this holiday we call Valentine's Day and this season that we call Lent? Well, I found the answer of how you combine the two in a strange place. I found it in the wilderness. I found it in the wilderness that we read about in this 4th chapter of Luke. And I know we read it a few minutes ago, but I just want to hit on it again, where it says, because I want you to really hear what it's saying, that Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned to the Jordan and was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. And he ate nothing and so forth, and the devil tempted him with all these different things. Make this rock turn into a loaf of bread, and Jesus comes back with answers. One does not live by bread alone. And then the devil led him up and showed him everything, all these kingdoms, and said, you can have this, but you have to worship me. And Jesus said, you worship God alone. And we know the story goes on, and he says, well, I'm going to take you up to the top of the temple and I'm going to say, if you are Jesus, the Son of God, then you can jump off of this temple and you'll be all right, because God's going to send angels to catch you and you're going to be fine. Well, how in the world could somebody really be in a wilderness for 40 days? 40 days, and have the power to do things like change a stone to bread and not do it? How can somebody have an opportunity to have power and influence over everything and everybody, but yet choose not to do it? How can somebody know that I have the power, I can jump off of a building and nothing's going to happen to me, and not want to show and prove it? Well, there was a difference in what we talk about, the literal interpretation of this text and the metaphysical interpretation of this text. If we look at the literal interpretation of the text, we see this thing, this demon called the devil, who is tempting Jesus, who is the Christ, and tempting Jesus to do these physical manifestations to prove who he really is. That's when you look at this in the kind of way that we've historically looked at this text. And we always think about, we have this devil character, this thing that's always in us and always around us, this thing that's trying to teach us how to live a certain way and how to love, how not to love one another. Well, my friends, that's not the kind of thing that this story is about. If you look at this story differently, you'll see that there was a man named Jesus the Christ who was in the situation, follow me on this, in this situation where he loved himself enough to know, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. He loved himself enough. He had what we talked, what the ensemble sung about. He had what we call a higher love. A love that was unlike just, I like me. we're real good at saying, I like me, I love me. We can talk about it, but there's a difference between just talking it and believing it. There's a big difference between the two. But when we have a higher love, that higher love is something that takes us to levels where you've never been before. That takes us to places where we can do whatever we want to do because we are rooted and grounded in a love that we can't be swayed. We can't be talked about. We can't be turned in a direction that we don't want to go. That higher love, my friends, is not something that's something out there. The higher love that I'm talking about is something that's in here. It's an inverted kind of relationship. I say higher sounds outer, but I'm really talking about an inner love, an indwelling that's always with us, and it's not moved by other people's opinions. Because what happens is we have this love that we are born with, we come to this incarnation with, and rather than go ahead and be the magnificent self that we were created to be, we allow our troubles to cover us up. We allow our failures to make us feel worthless. We allow our heartbreaks to smother us to the point that we can't even feel the love that we have for ourselves. We can't understand our real identity. We believe that we're broken. We believe that we can't do. When we were created as these images, as the manifestation of the Creator in this earth. But do you know it? Do you live like it? Do you react like it? Or do we give in to these temptations that tell us that we are not who we really say we are, or try to tempt us to prove that we're something that we really didn't even want to be in the first place? Who was it? Thomas Merton said, the biggest human temptation is to settle for too little. The biggest human temptation is to settle for too little. Have you ever done that? You had a dream, you had an image, but you said, well, I'll take this because this is all I deserve. Because you don't know what people have been saying about me. You don't know what my mama said about me, the person that walked out on me. You don't know what they said about me. You don't really know me because you think there's more power in me than I think I have. But the biggest human temptation is to settle for too little. But unfortunately, I talked about the things, that negative things that people say about us. There's also this false thing that we carry with us, some of us, where we think we're better and bigger than anybody else. You've been watching the presidential debates? Sometimes we do have this ego. There's nothing wrong with having an ego. You have to have an ego. You can't do anything in the world if you don't have an ego. People kill me with that. Well, you let your ego get in the way. Well, my ego is because of my ego that I was able to go to college. It was because of my ego that I was able to stand up here today. It was because of my ego. But when your ego gets out of control, see, I talk to my ego every day. My ego is my friend. I say, you need to cooperate with me. You need to help a sister out. Because I can be a little shy sometimes. I can forget. I can remember the things that my mom and my dad said to me about what you're not and where you're not going to be and what's not in you and who you can't become. But I understand that sometimes we let our ego, our search for success, all these things that really don't give real love and joy to us, but look impressive to other people. Sometimes we let that get in our way too. Henry Nouwen, who was a 20th century Christian mystic, he stated it this way. He said, success, popularity, and power can indeed present a great temptation, but their seductive quality often comes from the way they are part of a much larger temptation at self-rejection. And he says, when we have come to believe the voices that call us worthless and unlovable, then success, popularity, and power are easily perceived as attractive solutions. He says self-rejection is the greatest enemy of the spiritual life because it contradicts the sacred voice that calls us beloved. Being the beloved constitutes the core truth of our existence. And I believe, I have a feeling when I read this story about Jesus in his wilderness, this is someone who knew who he was as the beloved, as a manifestation of God in this world. This is someone who understood that no matter how I try to get swayed, no matter who says what about me, no matter who tempts me or threatens me, I am. You can't make me become anything else if I know I am. And so that's what Jesus in this story is about. So he's tempted by this thing we call the devil. Before I talk about the devil, I want to tell you a little story about the devil. There were a bunch of people who were in church one Sunday, and the church was packed. And all of a sudden, the doors flew open, and the smoke fills the room. And out of the smoke comes this creature, the devil. And all the people get up and run out of church, except for two people. It's the preacher and this woman. And so the devil says, well, wait a minute. Looks at the preacher and says, now I know why you didn't run out. Because you've been talking about me, you've been preaching about me, so I understand you think you know me. But he looks at this woman and the devil says, and you, how come you didn't run out? And the woman says to the devil, well, I'm surprised you don't recognize me. I've been married to your brother for 35 years. Well, that's a joke. But let's take a moment. Let's take a moment and talk about that. You want to hear another devil joke? Okay. There's this woman. She's poor. She doesn't have any money. She's like praying every night. Lord, send me some food. I know you're going to send me some food. I know I'm broke. I don't have any money. There's no way for me to feed my family. But Lord, send me some food. And there was an atheist that lived next door. And he used to say, shut up. I want to hear all that. Nobody's listening to you anyway. And she would still continue, Lord, send me some food. I need some food. And so this guy said, the atheist says, well, I'm going to show her. I'm going to go to the store. I'll buy her a bunch of food. I'm going to leave it for her on her doorstep. And when she came out, she saw the stuff, and she said, Lord, thank you. Thank you so much for the food. And the guy comes out and says, see, you think God sent you that food? I bought that food for you. And the woman says, she starts shouting and running up and down the street. And he's like, what's wrong with you? And she says, I knew that God was going to supply, but I did not know that the Lord was going to use the devil to send me money. I don't have any more devil jokes. But I do have something that I want to talk about. This devil that we talk about. Some of us were raised in churches and in families and situations that made us think that there's this power outside of us, this thing. We have these images of this little man, and I'm glad the devil never shows up in female form, not too many. Well, I know some of them, but we have this image of this creature, this thing that's outside of us that makes us do bad things. But that's not true. There is no person in a red suit with a pitchfork that sits on your shoulder and tries to say, no, do this, don't do that. There is no creature like Red Fox, I think, used to talk about, the devil made me do it. No, what is in us, what is the real existence of the devil, what we call the devil, is our own error of consciousness. It's our own error of thinking. It is our own self saying and leading us to do things and making it such that we can't hear the best in us because of all that junk I talked about. It's on top of our real self. all that hurt and all the baggage and all these things that we carry with us, all these things make us unable really to see the Christ in us. It makes us, it allows us to make choices from something that's foreign to us. And then we forget who I am. We forget I am. Because if we remember I am, we're not going to do some of the things that we blame on the devil. Y'all follow me on that? That's what we call, when we get to a higher love, is when we get to a deeper love. A love where we're back to the core of who we really are. Where we're not going to let anything or anybody sway us. And that's the kind of thing that we read about in this text. And that's what's so wonderful about looking at this text on Valentine's Day. Because it is a love story about watching someone who loved himself so much and knew he was loved so much that he would not let anything sway him from what he knew himself to be. Do you know yourself to be loved? Do you know that at the core of your being, that's who and what you are? Life will try to make you feel otherwise. People try to make you feel otherwise. We have these doubts that we put on top of the truth of who we are, and we forget. But I want to look at this text and see some clues on how we can get back to knowing who we really are. How we can get back to living in a higher level of love every moment of our lives. If you look at the text, it starts out with saying, Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, went into this wilderness situation. My friends, if we want to continue or get back to our real self, a higher love, then perhaps we would do well to do some intentional connecting to the Spirit of God. That doesn't mean you have to reach for anything. It means you have to reach in, because the Spirit of God is in you. You have to, though, take some quiet time. It takes a little downtime, a little meditation time, a little time of being alone. When was the last time you were really alone? And when I say alone, I mean without the radio, without the television. Have you left your cell phone home on purpose? Have you turned it off? When was the last time we were really alone? Alone enough that we could feel and hear what's really going on inside of us. And when have you been able to go beyond that? Where you can shut down the noise that's going on in your own head. Been able to stay with yourself in the quiet long enough that you get to this moment that's beyond anything that you can put words to. Because that's when you get to the core of your real self. It takes time, it takes meditation, it takes intention. And the thing about meditation, I read somewhere that the thing about meditation is you become more and more you during your time of meditation. You become more and more you. And then I read something else that said you should sit in meditation for 20 minutes a day, unless you're too busy to do it. Then you should sit for an hour. If you're too busy to do it, you need to sit for an hour, not 20 minutes. The other thing it takes is commitment. See, some of us don't believe. I mean, there are probably people in this room that think I'm like talking hocus pocus stuff. But I'm talking real stuff. I'm talking something beyond anything you can imagine if you've never tried to get there. And I'm talking about having a desire to want to evolve to this level of higher love, that we can walk in any situation and not be moved, not be changed, not be taken off our center. I'm talking about wanting to do that. You have to have a commitment to it, a willingness to do it, because it does take some work. It does take some shifting of our mind. It takes some chasing away thoughts when they come, because I don't care how evolved we are, there are still times when thoughts of doubt and self-doubt and negativity come our way, but we have to block it. We have to have enough power in us to say, well, I'm not going to let that. I'm not going to let that stop me. I'm not going to let that throw me off my path. I'm not going to do that. It takes some commitment and some willingness to make those sort of changes. It takes time. And we need not to be afraid. I read somewhere commitment is that turning point in your life when you seize the moment and convert it into an opportunity to alter your own destiny. I'm inviting you to alter your own destiny by deciding that there are things in your life that maybe you need to move aside to make more room for nothing. Make some room for nothing in your life. Make some room to just be alone with yourself and with the Spirit of God. And the third thing we need to have, when we look at the story, we need to have the right fuel. See, in this story, we see Jesus had the right fuel because it talks about the fact that when he was tempted, his response to every temptation, he came back with something he already knew. Every temptation, he came back with the first one. He says, man does not live by bread alone. He didn't pull that out of thin air. That came out of Deuteronomy in the 8th chapter in the 3rd verse. And then when he was tempted to gain all this power and to compromise, he came back with something that fortified him, that he didn't pull it out of thin air. It came out of Deuteronomy again in the 6th chapter in the 13th verse. We said, worship the Lord your God and serve God only. And when he was tempted to put God to the test, he didn't just come up with some words that said, don't put the Lord God to the test. He was quoting Deuteronomy, the 6th chapter and the 16th verse. I'm inviting us all to fuel ourselves with things that will fortify us in those moments when we start to doubt, in those moments when we start to fear, in those moments where we feel off track. We need to have something that we've already prepared in us that we can go grab onto. I remember riding my bike through the hills in, what area of town is that? Chastain area. There are hills over there, y'all. If you never walked over there, if you never tried to ride a bike, you have not seen half the hills that are over there. But as I was going up this hill, I'm trying to get up here, and I am shouting at the top of my lungs. Now, these days, I'd probably get arrested, but I was shouting at the tops of my lungs, I can do all things through Christ. And I'm shouting it as I'm trying to pedal my bike up this hill, because the Christ in me had to help me to keep moving, help me to keep going, to help me to know, Kathy, you can make it. There's more to you than what you think. There's more to you than what you know. I'm inviting you, my friends, to feed yourself with things that will fortify you, whether it's a song, whether it's a scripture, whether it's an affirmation. Affirmations work wonders. And please keep some with you. I had one, I don't know if it's still there. I've had one for years on my mirror at home. And it helped me. It was something that helped me, people who were living with chronic illnesses. And it kept me going. It keeps me standing. I don't have a sexy walk, but I'm walking. And I don't always have a steady, just standing here, but I'm standing here. Because I have affirmations. I put them, that one time I was going through something, I had affirmations pasted to the dashboard in my car, had them on the windshield, had them on the mirror at home. We have to feed ourselves with things that are going to reprogram all this mess that we've taken on in our life. There's a book I would recommend to you. It's written by Dr. Michael Beckwith, and I'm using it during the season of Lent. And it's called A 40-Day Mind Fast Soul Feast, a guide to soul awakening and inner fulfillment. It has little meditations and affirmations for every day of 40 days. And if you're around to it, maybe look that up. And it's called Mind Fast Soul Feast, because we have to be intentional. And I don't care how evolved we think we are, we have more evolution to go. It doesn't stop. It doesn't end. And so I'm grateful today that I was invited to come here and talk on a Sunday that is both Valentine's Day and Lent. Because I want to invite you to take this time when people are talking about Lent and giving stuff up and all of that. When you see that and when you hear that, remember that this is a special time for you to make a choice to grow in consciousness. This is not a time to suffer. This is not a time to beat yourself up. This is not a time to say, I'm just a wretch and I'm letting things go. No. This is a time to say, yeah, I'm letting some stuff go because I want to free myself to be myself. That's what we're doing. Freeing yourself to be yourself. And I invite you to come into this place, this Christ-like place of consciousness. This place of a higher love that we refuse to move off of. Because when we reach that place of higher love, we want to do things like get a bus to go around and feed people. When we reach that place of higher love, we want to look at our loved ones and see the Christ in them. We don't want to see what we used to argue with. We don't want to see the problem that you thought you had yesterday. You want to see this wonderful, wonderful being created in the image of God. Everybody around us is that. So look for that. Don't look for the negativity. Don't look for the problems. You get worn out, you get tired. You won't have enough time to really be yourself. But I invite you, my friends, to go ahead and just, go ahead, be you. I read something from Thomas Merton that said, we are already one, but we imagine that we're not. He said, and what we have to do, recover, is our original unity. And all we have to do, he said, is just be what you really are. My friends, look inside. See the love in you. See the Christ in you. See what you really came to this world to share out of the depth of your love for yourself, for your brothers and sisters, for this whole world. And you'll find when you'll do that, you'll instinctively know, I am in this moment being the real me.